My name is Paul Latour, and I'm president of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce, and I want to take this opportunity to first and foremost welcome you here tonight for what we expect to be a very good conversation entitled Roadmap to Rutherford County Funding. We're pleased that you all are all here today. We look forward to some great presentations. I want to thank our delegation for being here. I know we have some more coming. There's just some traffic time in Murfreesboro this time of year is brisk. Everybody's out shopping, so that's a good thing. But we are excited that you're here, and again, look forward to a very, very good conversation. And so my role tonight is to be the facilitator, and my job is to keep everybody hopefully on time, keep everybody on topic, and I have look forward to doing that. And so we will now begin. But we're not really anticipating any questions from the audience tonight or any comments, but want to have some good dialogue between our local county officials as well as our state delegation to address our challenges as it relates to growth. And so growth, it can be a good thing, but also can be a challenge. But again, we're glad you're here. And so kind of what we're going to do in the agenda is here, the first group will be some county folks led by the mayor. We'll also have Michael Smith, Jimmy Sullivan, our superintendent, or director of school, excuse me. Will Denami is on, also Judge Lampley will talk about that. They'll talk about some different things as it relates to the projected needs for schools in terms of funding, some of the legislative landscape, comparison of Rutherford to other fast-growing counties, and then look at some different options for funding in addition to what's already been presented. After that, we'll have a short Q&A from our delegation as well as the mayor. And then at 5:40, we'll go over some comments from some different commissioners that have been invited to speak tonight. Commissioner Phillips, Mr. Harris P. Dodd, and Commissioner Wilson are available to speak, and then we'll look at that. And then finally, we'll wrap it up. The third group, rather, will be some representatives from the home builders and the Realtors Association. So they'll have some good ideas and some comments to make as well. So without further ado, I hope everybody understands the landscape. We're going to have a great discussion tonight. And with that, Mayor, I will let you lead things off, and appreciate your leadership here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And, we've got a room full of interested citizens here tonight, which shows you the importance of this topic. And I want to thank the delegation for being here this evening, as well as the members of the County Commission and the Home Builders Association and all the stakeholders in Rutherford County. There's not a single citizen, property taxpayer, business group, interest group that is not a stakeholder in this particular issue. Everybody has a vested interest in seeing it get resolved and get resolved to in a satisfactory manner that reflects that everybody's had some input. Before I get started, Paul, I want to recognize Mayor Sheila Butt from Murray County here this evening. Thank you, Mayor, for joining us. Your presence here is appreciated, so thank you very much. Before we get started, I want to make sure, because I've talked to the team, I want to make sure we have a good understanding of some of the definitions and terms that are going to be referenced tonight. And I'm using these terms, and I'm giving somewhat of a legal definition, and I'm glad Nick is here, the county attorney, so he can provide clarity if I somehow misspeak. But you're going to hear terms like development taxes, you're going to hear a term like impact fees, you're going to hear a term property taxes, and those three terms in particular need to have specific definitions assigned to them because the law is pretty clearly about how we can implement those and what circumstances those can be used and implemented. For the purposes of property taxes, everybody understands what property taxes are. I have the dubious distinction of being the county mayor, Paul, that just raised property taxes 26 cents or 16%. Unfortunately, it was the largest property tax increase in the history of Rutherford County. And I didn't know that when I came in, but Rutherford County, as you have heard me speak on several occasions, was left with a $64 million budgeted deficit. Having said that, we also inherited a tremendous amount of growth. Dr. Sullivan and Will Denami will speak to that in a few minutes, but we inherited a tremendous amount of growth. And so in an effort to restart things, pay off the credit card debt, pay off the $64 million of deficit, we had to raise property taxes. But before we did that, we found $25 million in savings in the county budget before we even began the process of looking at, do we raise property taxes, and if so, how much? The reason I bring that up is this. Property taxes, by definition, are meant to do one thing and one thing only. A lot of us believe that property taxes are designed for the government to buy stuff. That is not the purpose of property taxes. The purpose of property taxes is to pay for the infrastructure that is already in place and the maintenance and upgrade of that existing infrastructure. It was never intended to pay for the expansion of infrastructure as a result of growth. So that's one definition of property taxes. That's the definition I'm working from. That's the definition that generally the county commission works from. And it's why it keeps us on a path to when we do raise property taxes, it's hopefully rare, but it's always for the maintenance and upgrade of the existing services provided by the county. The other definition is development taxes. Development taxes are used to help offset the infrastructure costs associated with new development. Taxes in the code generally, unless otherwise authorized or stipulated in the code, go to the general fund, as opposed to impact fees, which are quite opposite. Impact fees are specifically designed for which the study refers and is constrained by the results of that study. Indeed, an impact fee cannot be levied by a county or a municipality in the state of Tennessee unless there is first a study undertaken to determine the purpose of the impact fee, the application of the impact fee, and how much that impact fee is to do. And when that study comes back, the municipality and the county are obligated to stay within that study. And you can, for reference, you can cite Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne. All three municipalities within Rutherford County have impact fees, and in all cases they've had to, by law, undertake a study to determine what that impact fee will do, where it's to be applied, and when it's to be applied. So those are the three definitions that when my team starts to present to you tonight, those are the kind of the definitions we're working with. Finally, I want to say this. The mayor's office, you as a delegation, and the county commission, we all represent the same county. We all represent the same interests. And we all have the same need to see this county grow. But we have a decision to make. Are we, Rutherford County, going to continue to exist with a difference in state law that discriminates Rutherford County from the adjoining counties of Williamson and Wilson, and from the cities of Murfreesboro and Smyrna and Laverne? And we will demonstrate that tonight and show you some statistics that reflect that in the last 20 years, or almost 20 years, Rutherford County has been at a decided disadvantage as it relates to other counties, Williamson and Wilson in particular, and the cities of Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne. And as a result, we have found ourselves at a strategic crossroads. And so what the commission and the mayor are asking tonight is that the delegation take a serious look at providing in statute the same parity, the same opportunity that already exists that the Tennessee General Assembly granted those counties and those cities in law to pay for growth without relying on the property taxpayers of Rutherford County. And so with that, I'll introduce Dr. Jimmy Sullivan, our Rutherford County School Superintendent. Dr. Sullivan, thank you.
Good evening, delegation. I also want to take a moment and just thank our school board. Our Rutherford County School Board is here, so I appreciate you all being here, and members of our staff as well. This is not a new problem for us. We debate this problem 10 to 12 hours a month amongst our school board, and I want to dedicate just some time to them because the amount of time they put into this not fun topic is something that definitely needs to be appreciated. So to start off, I want to read just a couple of school districts. Boston, Massachusetts, Detroit City, Michigan, Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, San Antonio, Texas. Why do I mention those four school systems? All of those are smaller than Rutherford County school systems the way we sit today. We are a unique school system. We are a top 100 school system for enrollment. If you go look at our enrollment over the last decade, you can click on all of the new categories that Rutherford County continues to show up in the top 100 because we weren't there a decade ago. Those other school districts are shrinking. Unfortunately, we're moving the wrong direction on that shrinking school enrollment statistic. We were in the hundreds, now we're already into the top 90 just this time last year. And so a unique challenge for us is how do we maintain that and how do we stay successful? And so there's a couple things that we really have looked at. Over the last 18 months, we've had a constant evolution of how are we looking at our expenditures and how are we looking at our revenue. We took a very invasive approach to looking at our buildings. We had a third-party vendor come in and walk with our principals and look at every single classroom and every single space that we had. As educators, we like to think of our experts in our field, but we had somebody come in and truly tell us, how are you using your space? Not what's the best space for educationally, but what is the best space that we're able to use to be able to fit students in seats. We have reallocated money from operations to building, money that we know absolutely could have gone to make sure that our students are getting the best teachers in front of them. We've reallocated quite a bit of funding to make sure, and I believe our finance director is going to talk a little bit more about that, from operations to be able to go towards building. And then last but not least, the thing as a director of schools and as elected officials, our school board does not want to do, we just got finished rezoning 51,000 families. 51,000 students that we have to rezone across this district to make sure that we are using seats. I feel like that's our calling, that we have to do. And that's where I stand as the director of schools. I'm Jimmy Sullivan, the proud director of Rutherford County Schools, educated K-12 in this district. And I see Rutherford County really at the precipice of either taking one or two directions. We are still very successful as a school system. However, we're to the point now, if we continue growing without the infrastructure, we're not going to be a successful school system. And that's something that our staff talks about. How do we maintain with what we're able to do? So let's just take a quick look at kind of where we are as a district. First, what we looked at is when we look at 2006. If we go back to 2006, and this comes out of EIS, which is the state's database. So these are true numbers we're funded on, how many students were actually reported to the State Department of Education. In April of 2006, we were at 30,840. So 30,840 in April 2006. We're constantly compared to Wilson County. I like to bring up Wilson County is nowhere near that enrollment currently. And so although it's a comparable district, it's not necessarily comparable for how big enrollment we are. As of December 11th, and this is just kindergarten through 12th grade, we were at 50,831. So April 2006, 30,840. December 11th of 23, 50,831. We've added 19,991 students. I probably should have just ran the numbers today to give you an even clear 20,000, because I guarantee you from December 11th to today, we have added an additional 9 students somewhere. But that was a true picture of where we were student-wise. Averaging, of course, we hear about over 1,000 kids a year, but that truly is over 1,000 kids per year. If we look at where we've gone to buildings, I want to thank our county commission for really being able to build as much as we possibly can, and because they have allocated resources. But what you're going to hear talk about quite a bit is that the resources, unfortunately, aren't enough to keep up with our growth. You'll see this goes all the way back from 2000 until 2023. Outside of 2011 and 2023, we have opened or had an addition to a building every single year. Some of those multiple years. You will notice a trend that the new schools start to fall off once you hit that kind of housing crisis and the bubble in 2008. The new buildings started to fall off, and we started to go towards additions to be able to use our resources the best that we can. We are now the proud recipients of the largest elementary school in the state in Roy Waldron. We are the proud owners of the largest middle school in the state in Blackman Middle School of almost 1,700 kids, and every one of our comprehensive high schools sits in the top 20 in the state. And so we have made our schools as big as we possibly can, yet still being successful. But unfortunately, as this graph does a great job of showing, we've built about all that we possibly can afford. And unfortunately, or fortunately, because people are moving here because they want to be a part of this, we are still to the point where we need additional facilities. Next thing to hit on is our school board just recently as of last Thursday, adopted our new 5-year plan. And so, or 2 Thursdays ago, sorry. Our new 5-year plan, so this is part of that really involved, invasive process we talked about. We had somebody come through and look at all of our buildings. We rezoned all of our students. Now we get to the point of, we always talk about having an evolving 5-year plan. We need a steady 5-year plan. This is what we need, and this is what we have to have. And that's where we are. Our school board talked about it, and we'll have a health and education meeting with the commission tomorrow. We don't expect this 5-year plan to change unless something doesn't get funded. And ultimately, that's what makes it change every single year. We have $157 million in a 5-year plan. With the cost of construction that continually improves and is continually increasing, that's our challenge. This includes a couple of different things, 12 new schools and renovations. And so it is not 12 additional new schools. That is our new schools and renovations to be able to add seats wherever it's possible to add seats. So we're trying to look at the best we possibly can. All while doing this, I think it's important to celebrate. You guys represent Rutherford County. It's things you should be proud of. McFadden School of Excellence was named the #1 elementary school. Central Magnet was named the #1 middle school. And then we slipped this year and we're the #2 high school in the state. We normally are #1 or #2 in the state, but we're extremely proud of the work that our schools do, even being so big, the opportunities that we had. The other thing that we like to point about is we are the 4th largest district in the state. And where I talked about us being on the precipice of continuing to be successful or struggling, it comes down to resources again. And as the director of schools, the most important thing for me is to provide educational opportunities for our students in a safe environment. Of the 5 large districts in Tennessee, we absolutely stand out with the results that we're getting. There's been conversation about your peer groups are now Memphis, Metro, and Knox. No disrespect to those 3, but I don't want to be in a peer group with those 3. We do things well, and I want us to continue to do things well, which is evidenced by our graduation rate, which is much higher than those. And that's something that we are continually proud of, even though we are one of the large districts in the state. And kind of the last thing that I wanted to hit on was that when we are talking about where are we going and what are we doing, we are doing more with less. On per pupil expenditure, now this doesn't include TISA from last year, but on the last ability report or available report from the comptroller's office, we are the 117 out of 142 per pupil expenditure. We are behind in per pupil expenditures the mega huge districts of Grundy County and Van Buren County. That's not what people think of when they think of Rutherford County. So I do want to give a shout out to our staff, to our schools, and to our commission and our school board, because we are doing more with less. We are 117 out of 142. So that begs the question, because I know one's going to get brought up. We are extremely thankful for the extra funding that TISA gave at the General Assembly. I've emailed you all multiple times about how great that has been. We've been able to allocate additional funding that we received, some pennies back to be able to truly be able to attract that building program. We've been able to try to get to the governor's $50,000 requirement in 2 years. And then just as importantly, though, that TISA formula is a year behind. And so there was a fast growth infrastructure stipend that I emailed all of you about, but for the public that is aware, the top growing districts in the state were eligible for an infrastructure stipend. That stipend did not come to fruition because not enough money was allocated. And so we are trying to do everything that we possibly can, but ultimately we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for our families. And I think at this point, I'll turn it over to
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, there are two, you got a letter from the Department of Education
Yes.
in November talking about the percentage of new student growth in Rutherford County as it compares to Tennessee. And you also received some information about ESL data for the first 2 or 3 months. Can you reference those?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
perfect. So a couple quick things on that. So when we look at the state allocation for TISA of the fast growing districts, we received just under 14% of that. I believe it was 13.57. I shared that with the delegation of the fast growing districts. For us to have 13% of that is huge to show how much we are growing. And that doesn't include Murfreesboro City. That is truly just Rutherford County schools. The second part of that is our changing enrollment and demographic. We have added over 700 students since September 11th. And over half of those students are English as a second language learner. And so our demographic is quickly shifting, and when you have a large changing demographic like that, our ESL students are making sure they get that core instruction of math, English, science, and social studies, but we also have to have a classroom for them to get their English language acquisition instruction. So it does come with extra funding, but that funding's not coming with the infrastructure portion. So, thank you.
Good evening, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm Michael Smith, the Finance Director for Rutherford County. And on the slide before you is I tried to make it as simple as could be, because when you put a slide up with a bunch of numbers and large numbers with that, sometimes people's eyes glaze over. So if you can just bear with me for a minute. But I want to talk about a little bit this slide and some of the challenges the county faced this past budget year and some of the challenges that we're going to continue to face. So the top row right there is the debt, the general obligation bond debt that the county had at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2023. And the total debt there is approximately $450 million. In October 2023, we issued $171 million of general obligation bonds. Now that came with a premium on there, but that ends up being what the actual debt obligation was. So as it stands today, we have $617 million worth of debt outstanding. And approximately almost 90% of that is due to schools. Now, it's no fault of their own. We're growing at about a school a year or more. And so one of the things I want to point out is, as you see, we started at 450. The request for the next 2 fiscal years or the next calendar year is an additional $409 million. Now, also, you got to take into account the bond principal payment. So take off $40 million in principal payment. That brings us to almost $1 billion of debt, with approximately 90% of that being school-related and 11%, 10% being county-related. But I want to talk about some of the challenges because we've done a lot of things to mitigate those numbers that you see there. So one of the first things we've done is a ton of refundings and refinancings. We've even done some taxable refundings and refinancing to take advantage of some of the lower rates over the last few years before interest rates started rising up. So one of the things on there you'll note is our true interest cost, or average true interest cost of all outstanding debt as of June 30th was 2.26%. And so we're really proud of that. And those are 20-year debt issuances. Get asked that a lot. But one of the challenges we're facing is, as you notice on the slide right there, as of October, interest rate for us jumped to over 4%. Well, that makes it so that almost every $1 million that we borrow, that's $75,000 to service our bond debt per year. So that $409 million is approximately $30 million per year to service. One of the other things we've done on top of the refundings and refinancings that we've done is we've moved a lot of pennies on the tax rate. Over the last 2 years, we've moved over 18 pennies out of the school's operating line item to pay for debt service strictly for schools. So that equates to about $27 million we've moved over the last 2 years out of the school's operating to pay for that. Including this year, we budgeted the operating of the schools down to the state statutory minimum, but all of those pennies did not leave education. They went strictly to pay for the debt service of education. The previous year, we budgeted down into a deficit and used some savings, and this year the funding went for the 3 high school additions that you see there on October 2023. And so currently, as it stands right now, 8% of our budget, of the entire county's budget, goes to debt service, principal and interest. So those are some of the challenges we face. But one of the things I would like to point out is, you notice there, when we're anticipating to do new debt issuances there in the coming year, it only includes schools. And so part of the job I'm tasked with is county as a whole. So that doesn't include sheriffs, public safety, anything related to that growth that would go along with it. So that is just some of the challenges we faced over the last 2 years specifically that I've been here. And I'm really proud of the job we did. A lot of people ask about the tax increase that came that none of us wanted to do, but that brought us back really to the status quo to try to get towards a balanced budget, and that's what we would really like to keep. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Will Denami.
Thank you, Mr. Latour and members of the delegation. It is a pleasure to be here in front of you today. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Will Denami. I am a registered lobbyist for Rutherford County. I also represent Hamilton County, Blount County, Williamson County, 911 districts, and assessors of property, so in the South Central Tennessee Development District. So I do a lot in the area of local taxation, revenue. I work on a lot of, and I've worked with you on a variety of different issues. This issue that's before you today is not new. This has been around since the beginning, 1996 through 2004, and up to this current year in 2023. And I want to thank you, Senator Reeves and the delegation, for your interest in holding this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Latour, for making the chamber available for it. For those of you who do not know, I want to take a second to brag on Mr. Latour as being one of the most professional economic development people in the entire state, and he's done a great job and continues to. Part of that success draws people in. This stat in front of you, if you see it, it's just 1 year, 2021 to 2022. 1 year, 9,417 people. That's how much the population went up, increased in 1 year in Rutherford County. 9,417. That's a good thing. There's other counties that have lost population, losing 100 people, losing 90 people. You would much rather be on the side of growing population than losing population. This is essentially a heat map. If you look at it, this map will demonstrate year after year what's been going on for the last 20 years. And you see this all over the state. This map shows you year after year what's going on. So Rutherford County, Williamson County, Wilson County, those three counties are really what I would call tier one in terms of growth. So when I say what is tier one, Rutherford County from 2010 to 2020 grew at 29.2%. Wilson County grew at 29.9%. And Williamson County grew at 33.9%. If you go to the next slide, I'll show you where this matters. So what is that total population growth? For Wilson County from 2010 to 2020, that was 34,000 people. In Williamson County, it was 62,000 people. And in Rutherford County, it was 76,000 people in that 10-year window. The reason I'm talking about Williamson, Wilson, and Rutherford County beyond just the percentages of growth is they're all economically linked. Wilson County, Rutherford County, and Williamson County all have an interstate running through them and are connected by 840. In this area, if you look at what is going on and look at the numbers in front of you, Williamson County was the first county in the state to get impact fees in 1987. Wilson County was the last county. Rutherford County, with the County Powers Relief Act of 2006, these are the numbers that are generated, and this is from this TASER study. So this is 21-22. In the same year that the county grew by 9,400 people. Wilson County has 19,000 students, and their private act generated $16.9 million. Williamson County, almost 42,000 students, and their private act combined $30.8 million. And again, this is in the TASER study that was produced last month. Rutherford County, almost 50,000 students. I think Dr. Sullivan say it's actually over 50,000 now as it continues to grow. And it's $5.5 million. So what does that mean? It means that the county has to fund, and if you look at that chart that was up there for the last 20 years, the county's built a school or made an addition every single year for the last 20 years. Every year, except for 2011 and this year. Every year. So the county, as the mayor said at the beginning, the county had to raise taxes this year. The current tax rate for Wilson County is 1.9089. For Williamson County, it's 1.8800. And for Rutherford County, it's 1.8762. So they're almost the same. 1.90, 1.88, and 1.87. But if you look here, this is the difference. This is the difference. This is what it is. We wouldn't be here today if there was some other alternative. We've been looking. We started off looking at trying to amend the County Powers Relief Act. We looked at trying to put in place a private act like Wilson County. Last week, the commission voted 20-1 to request impact fees, the same thing that the cities within the county have, Smyrna, Laverne, and Murfreesboro. And this is why. This is the difference. you know, I think it's important that we talk about this. I'm glad that we're here today and we'll be around to answer questions. Again, we've looked at all different kinds of options. But this is where we are. Thank you.
So you guys did a great job on time, by the way. Congratulations. Thank you. You did great. And so we've got about 10 minutes left in your section for any questions from the delegation or any or comments that anyone would like to make. Okay.
If I may, Paul, quick closing remarks.
Yes, sir.
So I know we're here to try to find the problem. We're here to try to hopefully find options to solving the problem of Rutherford County's growth. But I want to make some things very clear in what we're asking the Tennessee General Assembly to do, and that's just give Rutherford County the tool that the Tennessee General Assembly has already given other counties and other cities. We're not asking for anything more or anything less. Indeed, the Tennessee General Assembly has thought so well for so many years that the best governance is the most local governance, and they've demonstrated that with Williamson and Wilson County, with Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne. I believe that Rutherford County Commission is one of the best, if not the best, county commission in the state, and it's demonstrated by one irrefutable fact. Rutherford County is one of 3 counties in the entire state of Tennessee that has a AAA bond rating. And yet, one of those other counties is Williamson, and the third is Hamilton. And so this county, long before I arrived on the scene, has consistently done more with less. But the growth is now at an inflection point. And so there are those who have said, well, Mayor, if you're not going to raise property taxes again to pay for growth, and I won't, I will not advocate for the raising of property taxes again to fund growth. That's not the purpose of property taxes. If we find ourselves at an impasse for a solution other than property taxes, then what is left to the mayor and the county commission is we have to cut the size of government, which some have said we need to do. I understand that. We cut it by $25 million in this last fiscal year. But if we do that again, it will mean an extreme cut in services. Because unless we either slow the growth or we pay for the growth, we have no alternative. And so I won't speak for the county commission. I'll let them do that for themselves. But the mayor's office believes that in order for us to achieve parity with Williamson and Wilson County, Murfreesboro and Smyrna and Laverne, the choice is give us the same option for those tools. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Representative Terry, you have a question?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions, if you'll stay there for a second, Mayor. First question is to you, and this goes back to the definition. I think there's concerns that I've heard out there as far as the impact fees, and you and I had a conversation about the study and it being limited. Could you expand on that? Because one of the questions would be, for me, would it be limited by time? So, like if you had mentioned there potentially the need in 2025 or 2026 for 2 new schools, $300 million. If the impact said that there was $300 million, would this impact fee be limited by the time that was paid off, or how would that be limited?
So,
by the study, particularly.
The study would constrain the commission. The results of the study would constrain the commission in how an impact fee were to be applied. And the perfect example is the impact fee study and subsequent impact fee that was recently passed by the Murfreesboro City Council. It was their first impact fee. And so what they did, that study came back with, that I believe, and we have some city councilmen here tonight, so they may be able to speak more expertly on this than I, but like it was for parks, roads, and schools. I think that's right. And so the funding for the impact fee that is generated is designated for those services in particular and can't move outside of that. As a matter of fact, it actually goes into a separate account to be spent. It does not, and it's against the law, to commingle those funds in the general fund. And so there is a purpose for which those funds are collected and used because it's in that area for that described purpose. So that it relates to a finite period of time. So as it relates to the $300 million you're referring to in new financing, that impact fee would impact that generally and specifically for the period of time for which it's defined. I can't tell you what that is because we haven't undertaken that study yet.
Mayor, there is a cap on how much local revenues we can put in the debt service fund, so it would also be capped by that on the tax certificate of the bond. We cannot generate a profit.
That's true. I'd forgotten about that. That's exactly right. Thank you. Well, Michael, come on up here in the mic so people at home can see that. I'd forgotten about that. Thank you.
So regardless of the means of funding for the growth needs or the capital needs of the county, we have to track specifically when we do a GO bond, because it's a tax exempt bond for the county, you have to track the local revenues that go with it, meaning we cannot build local revenues in that fund past what the debt capacity or the debt payment interest and principal of the debt we're borrowing for. Meaning we can't just let that fund build perpetually. So, for example, you would have to reduce the local funding, or reduce, if the local funding is an impact fee or property tax, whatever that is, you would have to reduce that as you pay out the bond principal and interest over time. So far, we've never seen, because we're growing so fast, we've never hit that. But if, for example, to your question, we did not need a school in 4 years, if that were to happen, as that bond would get paid out for the school system, we would need to reduce the local taxes, with that being an impact fee going into there for that.
So to add on that, so if, say you were paying that down and there was determined that another school is going to have to be built, then that would extend that? Is that what?
You would have to look at a new study there as well.
Right, new
for
study
that.
to extend it. Okay.
But I want to be clear, we cannot pad that fund. It's not like the general fund that has unassigned fund balance, or the school's operating fund that can have it. You're not allowed legally to have an unassigned fund balance in the debt service fund. Okay. And so right now, as you see our adequate facilities tax that was up there a minute ago, that specifically goes into our debt for education. And so it doesn't even get close to that. But if it did, we would have to reduce that at some point.
Appreciate you being here. Is this working, Paul? We're on.
Yep.
So one question I've got has to do with just the math on this. So you had said, Michael, in your presentation, we've already got $617 million bonded out.
Yes.
And there's an additional
Let me get my piece.
It said as of today, $617 million is bonded out.
That's correct.
And you're asking for another $409 million.
That is the request for the school system was made.
Which would go to $986 million. How is that tying to the $857 million that's?
So the only thing that I've included is if you had their 5-year plan up there, which we don't, that is the first year of their plan.
So really, it's not your $400
I am
million.
I am looking, as we make projections, this would be for the next calendar and fiscal year. So like I mentioned in my presentation, it would be well over $1 billion if we got there. This was just doing a snapshot of this current fiscal year we're in and the next fiscal year of what's anticipated.
So you need $409 million for 25, 26 year? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, and I think this kind of dovetails on Representative Terry's comment. So this survey is, if you do go through the survey process and we look at impact fees, what is to prevent the county? Is there a cap? Did I miss that? What's to prevent the county from charging, $100,000 caps on impact fees moving forward?
The study.
Okay, so the study limits that specifically.
Absolutely. The study limits the amount, and it'll give you a range in which you're allowed legally to levy in the form of an impact fee. They don't give you a set amount. Typically, it's a range. And I know, like with Murfreesboro, they had a range of, and I'm trying to recall from memory, it was $1 square foot to $3 a square foot. I think they came in at $1.50 as a starter, and next year they're going to raise it 50 cents. So they had a range of per square foot that the study came back and said that they could lawfully assess.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So, great job. It was 5 to 5:40. Fantastic. Well, good deal. So our next group I want to invite to come up, and I don't know exactly what order, but I'll ask Chairman Phillips if he wanted to go first. I think I've got on the list here yourself as well as Mr. Harris P. Dr. Wilson. Want to say a few words, sir? Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Paul. I'm not sure I want to go first. I've made some few notes and I've scratched through them without trying to be redundant with other people, but I would like to thank the Chamber for hosting this meeting today. Conversations between the County Commission and our delegation has got kind of tense the last couple of years, and that needs to stop. It needs to stop. We all represent the same people. We all represent, the County Commission represents all the people of Rutherford County. Our mayor represents all the people of Rutherford County. Our state delegation represents all the people of Rutherford County. We should be working hand in glove to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County. Our request tonight is not to implement an impact fee, a development tax, or any type of adequate facilities tax. It's just to put us on the level playing field by giving us a tool so that we can make that decision locally. I don't want to overstate this, but what business does the state legislature in Nashville have dictating what Murfreesboro, Laverne, Smyrna, or the county of Rutherford needs as far as paying for growth? It should be a local decision. You as a state do not like the federal government dictating to you what you need or we need as a state. We as a county do not like the state dictating to us what we can and what we cannot do. Our fund revenue is restricted in a way that we're dependent pretty much wholeheartedly upon property taxes. There are some counties, and they've been mentioned, and I won't go into those, but Williamson County as an example, and Wilson County as an example are neighboring counties that have the flexibility to create revenue that Rutherford County don't have. And all we're asking is just to put us on a level playing field so that we don't have to go to the property tax base year after year after year. We've got three former county commissioners up here that were part of prior resolutions asking the state for help. All three of you voted to ask for the state to give us some help. We tried it again last year. We're trying it again this year. There's no way that the county commission has ever tried to hurt growth in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Not only am I a 30-year county commissioner, and not only do I chair the county commission, but I'm a 30-year Rutherford County planning commissioner. And I chaired that commission for 16 years. And we've supported the development community through our planning situation year after year after year. To add to that a little bit, we implemented our first comprehensive plan in 2012. That plan is being updated now. It's been 10 or 11 years. That plan is being updated right now. And that plan, hopefully, will give our citizens an opportunity to participate in what the vision for our county should be over the next 30 years. It's an extremely important document, and this time is an extremely important time for Rutherford County. That plan and that vision calls for all of us to come together, you, us, citizens as a whole, to come together for us to realize what our county could look like, not only this year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, but hopefully 30 years from now. We need the tools to help us pay to get there. I'm proud to be a part of the county commission. I am proud of each one of you. Each one of you has helped the county in ways that I can't even fathom through the years. I see a bright future. I see a bright future for us as a county. I see a bright future for us as a to be even a stronger influence statewide. Not only are we the fastest growing county in the state, but I see each of you developing leadership skills and leadership goals that are going to service this county extremely well. Once again, we all represent the exact same people. We all do. And I trust that you are wanting what's in the best interest of Rutherford County citizens. That's what the County Commission is asking for your help in allowing us to represent the taxpayers of Rutherford County to the very best of our ability. Give us the tools that we need to accomplish those goals. Once again, we're not advocating for an impact fee. We're not advocating for a development tax. We're not advocating for an adequate facilities tax. We're advocating to put that tool in our box to allow us to study and make the decision as to what we need going forward. We need to do that. It needs to be our job. The mayor can help, but it's not his job. It's the county commission's job to do that. We represent small districts, and there's no better representation anywhere in the world than the county commission. We represent neighborhoods, and our neighbors are telling us to tell you that we need this tool. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all you've done for us and for the citizens of Rutherford County in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Phillips. Is there anyone else from the County Commission? Commissioner Harris?
Delegates, thank y'all for being here. I believe that the only way we can solve this problem is we all work together. And I think it's very important for what we're doing here tonight, but we also got to educate the public on the situation we're in. The number that I want to throw out there is 30 million. That's how much debt service is going to be if we had to do what they need as far as building schools. Now we're getting almost 1,200 kids a year coming in. And I'm trying to give you a little bit of idea of what we're facing. So it costs around $8,460 a year for a kid to go to school. Now the state pays a majority of that, which leaves around $3,200. I believe I'm close. So that's $3,200 that we're responsible for. Based on our last census, it is 2.3 children per household. So now that number is 6,400. On a average price of a house, average size of a house is around $2,250. The property tax on that is around $1,600. So you see it doesn't add up. And you see that we're already upside down. Now, everybody focuses on schools, and we should. It's 85% of our budget. But we have other departments we got to take care of as well. And I do not feel that the home builders should bear the total burden on this. I think that we should look at all avenues and all ways to raise money. What does that look like? Well, give us more portion of the sales tax. Let us have some of the lottery money. And if we don't, at worst case scenario, give us interest-free loans. Do I think the home builders need to do more? Well, yes, I do. And let me try to explain that. In 2006, we had an impact fee of $1,500. In 2020, in 2021, I helped get us $1 per square foot with me and Charlie on $1 per square foot. Now that brought in right below $3 million of additional revenue. It's not enough. But I'm up here to give you some ideas of what we can do to raise revenue. It cannot be just the home builders. It's got to be other areas. And I think those are areas that you will focus on and can get that for us. Now, in 2006, a builder paid $1,500 impact fee or development tax. We changed it in 2020 or 2021, I can't remember. Anyway, based on a 2,200 square foot house, that price was an additional $600. So they were paying $2,250 instead of $1,500. It generated in 2022 figures around $5 million. All right. Now, what I also believe in, I also believe in the impact fee, but I also believe in raising the school facilities tax. And I believe that if we raise the school facilities tax to 2.25, then we're looking at an additional $6 million. And that, with the other things that I asked you and tried to get you to think about, can help us get to that $30 million level, because that's where we got to get to. Now, there's been some questions amongst y'all that we are not united, the county commission. And I'm here to tell you as chairman, that is not true. We are united. We're united in trying to fund and find revenues for us to pay for our schools and for the other departments that we have. It's not easy, but I know I've been a commissioner going on 6 years and we have done nothing except raise the dollar. And that's a good thing. Y'all did that. And that's a good thing, but it's not enough. And we had to look, and I think one of the areas that we got to do is we got to look at the mayor's impact fee. But then also we got to look at possible raising school facilities tax, and it create additional money. Now, here's the big kick that the home builders have, and what they complain about is they feel that we have an open-ended book. You heard the mayor say, you know, we're restricted by the study. But I've also proposed, and I've also looked at this too, is right now we can raise the school facilities tax 10% every 4 years, depending on growth. All right, that's not going to work. We're growing way past that amount. So we need to compromise and look at possible 3 years at 25 cents. And those are things we can look at and negotiate with, but we have got to raise revenues. We are united. We are wanting to help, and I know for a fact we want to work with y'all. And we cannot do this without y'all. And I think it's time, as a delegation, we ask that you help us stand up and fight for us and look at all these options and help us overcome the burden we have. Because I'm going to tell you, a lot of the people around here don't know, but we're in a dire situation. I think if y'all really been looking at it, I know I've talked to Senator Reeves a lot, we're in a dire situation. We're going to have 10,000 portables, and how safe is that? And we don't want that. So I appreciate y'all having me here. I appreciate y'all listening to me. And like I said, I want to reiterate this one more time. The county commission is united and trying to do everything we can to get this problem understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other commissioners that want to speak? There's about 7 minutes left, or are there any, Commissioner P?
I think just about everything that's been said, y'all have heard before, but I'm going to add one more thing to that. It's called trust. To me, that's what this meeting is about. That's what the problem with the home builders and the other people is, we don't trust each other. But we should. I want to point out something. In this state, the 5 largest counties, Rutherford County has the lowest tax rate. Rutherford County, out of those 5 largest counties, has the lowest debt, other than one. I think Chattanooga may be a little bit under us, but we still have a lower tax rate. If you look at our school system, we've got one of the most outstanding school systems, not only in the state, but in this nation. Our schools are nationally ranked. And we pay less per student. So we're using our money wisely. That's my point. I know the 3 commissioners that I've worked with very closely are part of the reason that we got a AAA bond rating. Now, when we got a review this year from our AAA bond rating, Standard & Poor's and Moody's. Moody's, I think we got a AA+. A lot of that's got to do with state regulations on who owns what county property. But both of them said consistently that the way we handle our finances is the best score they could have given anybody. So the way we handle our finances, and the reason I'm saying that, I used to build, believe it or not, last time I bought a water tap, I think it was $250. Y'all can laugh now because you know what it is. I used to, as a volunteer firefighter, I went out and collected money to put hydrants in. And I know what those cost now too. So a lot of the prices, and having done some remodeling, my plywood when I first started was $20 a sheet and went to $75 a sheet. As far as the cost, a lot of that cost is not taxes coming from the county. But what I'm trying to tell you, because I've seen this, I know Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Dodd, I can go on and on. We realize the problems that the stakeholders in this county, the realtors, the developers, the builders have. So we do it too. But what I'm asking y'all to trust us. Personally, I think that the County Powers Act should allow Rutherford County the same choices that the municipalities have. And I would expect you to trust us to do the things that will not harm the rest of these stakeholders. And I think we've proven that. If you go back and look at our tax rates, and we had a big jump here. Why did we have that jump? If you go back and look at Wilson and Williamson and all the surrounding counties back during the Great Recession, every one of them raised their taxes around 30 cents, some of them even higher. What did Rutherford County do? We did not raise them because we knew our people were hurting. And so we drug our funds down. That's part of the reason this mayor walked into lower funds. Now, the other reason was we couldn't hire firefighters, we couldn't hire policemen, we're losing school teachers because we didn't pay them an equitable price. And we had to do that. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have the people that we've got now in our police forces. And speaking of them, our SROs. We were the first county in this state, and some in the First Nation, put SROs in our schools to take care of our kids. If you don't think our heart's not in the right place, I'm telling you, it is. And I'm asking you to trust us, and I'm asking you to vote to let us have the same powers that the municipalities have in the County Powers Act. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have one question from.
Well, any commissioner can answer this. I don't put anybody on the spot, but any commissioner can. I understand there was some raising of fees for permits to build a new home. Is that correct?
They were raised last year.
Okay, and can you explain to me what the money is going for, the additional fees, and how much they were raised?
Theoretically, raised permits and fees are to offset the cost of running those departments. Ours was raised for the first time in a good long while. Maybe the mayor can expound upon that, but basically, fees are there to help offset the cost of running those departments and/or county government.
That's a great question. We have 3 departments in Rutherford County government, building and codes, zoning, and engineering, whose primary, if not exclusive responsibility is to deal with new development in the county, whether it's commercial or residential. 2 of those departments, because of the previous fee structure, were literally underwater. And what I mean by that is the fees generated within those departments weren't enough to pay for the staffing and the requirements of those departments. And so those fee increases were designed to make those departments revenue neutral back to the county's general fund so that those entities requesting new development paid for the fees associated directly with that new development. Michael?
I just want to compound on that a little bit. Part of that too was we added a new position in our stormwater department to try to expedite some backlog there. Those fees were very nominal. They are in the general fund. Those fees so far this year and are projected towards the end of the year to generate an additional $500,000 to $750,000 a year. But a large portion of that was almost all three were underwater. One was very close to breaking even as far as the departments, as far as building codes, planning, and stormwater. But they moved an additional person to full-time and added a new position in this year to try to expedite the amount of work and business that those three departments handles. And they are still, two of them are still don't generate enough money to pay for themselves. And like I said, one, the building codes department is close to neutral there, but that's where it went for.
Let me just kind of add one little caveat to that. What we're seeing, you guys well know that the state passed legislation 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago maybe, that related to urban growth boundaries and cities not being able to expand their footprint without permission. What's happened in Rutherford County, and we see the trend going, is that there's more and more commercial and industrial development out in the county when there was none 15 years ago. And we see most of that happening in the county right now. What we also see is tremendous outside of the county influence coming into Rutherford County and building in Rutherford County because it's cheap. And that bothers us. It bothers us as a commission quite a bit. It appears that 2/3 to 75% of the development going on out in the county is someone other than our local builders and our local developers. Those are trends that we see could be corrected by giving us the tools that we need to adjust that.
Quick clarification.
Senator Reeves.
Super fast here, Commissioner, again. So Commissioner Harris said we needed $30 million a year in additional funds to fund $400 million in immediate bond. So I'm assuming we're going to need $60 million a year if ultimately we approve the $857 million 5-year plan, right? So really we're going to need up to $60 million at some point in time by 2030, right? So I'm just worried we're going to put a Band-Aid on something to be sitting in this room
That's
again.
correct. Now keep in mind one thing that happens is revenue, hopefully as we continue to grow, we want to use the growth of sales tax, of property tax, of different things like that, right? So that's why if we get too much further out than 1 or 2 budget years, it's really becomes very arbitrary on, what does it grow at? What is your projection of growth? What is my projection of growth? Those are all different. So that's why on the chart I looked at, it'd be the $30 million for there, but then also too, that's assuming we'll still continue to grow at 1,200 kids a year. That's depending on property tax historically grows at about 3%. Sales tax this year really has been flat, for the county. And so those are one of the things, if all things held equal, I think you'd probably need a little less than the 60. But if growth were to slow, on property tax or sales tax, we'd need a little more. Okay. So I just want to be clear on that.
Senator, it puts us in a position, it puts the county in a position to make a decision as to whether or not to build. And those are the decisions that we find ourselves between a rock and that hard spot. We want additional tools to make decisions that's going to help us offset the cost of growth.
Quick.
Yes. Can I have Dr. Sullivan up here? You can answer this. I need to figure out with the new TISA formula, how much is Rutherford County without the weights, without the different pots of money because they're an ESL student or they're reducing free lunch student. What is the average that you automatically get?
I'd have to go look without the weights because everything I get has all the weights and everything else. So if you'll give me a couple minutes while everybody else is presenting, I can pull up what it has back.
Okay. And I think it was what we put in Rutherford County around 3,200 extra after what the state sends down. Is that correct?
What do you mean extra from our state, our local revenue?
Yeah.
We can pull up the actual percentage too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll wait on that answer as we transition into our next phase. So good. Thank you guys for your comments and ideas. So next up on the agenda is our last group of representatives. So we've got Chris Jensen representing the Home Builders Association. I think you may have someone else with you as well from the, you guys feel free to Come on up.
Christopher Wilson with Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors. We are here as realtors to support our local home builders and their concerns with the plans moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris. I'll be here for any questions related to the real estate side.
I don't enjoy public speaking, so I wrote everything down. As you mentioned, my name's Chris Jensen. I'm here tonight as the president of the Home Builders Association of Central Tennessee. I'm a second-generation local custom home builder, and I've been building within this community for over 2 decades. There are many reasons for the Home Builder Association, but the most important that we put our efforts to is for home affordability. Tonight, we obviously are all here to discuss taxes, and it's a subject matter that no one likes. There's also, as we look at this, there's three ways to solve an out-of-balance budget. The first is to bring additional revenue in, the second is to cut spending, and the third is to do a combination of the two. However, we also have other issues at hand to consider on our end, well, on everybody's end. We have a nationwide housing affordability crisis. It's not a problem, it's literally considered a crisis. In addition, we have a housing availability crisis that has been compounding every year, which also exacerbates the affordability crisis. According to the NAHB's priced out estimates for 2023, the average home price for the state of Tennessee is $346,540. According to this same estimate, 70% of Tennessee households cannot affordably purchase a home today within this current market. In regards to the nationwide availability statement, availability crisis, I have a statement from the same TASER study as brought up earlier, which is being conducted to look at housing affordability, impact fees, and development taxes. Quote, recently, several states have undertaken legislative action to address housing. Most have sought to reform local land use regulations to facilitate the construction of housing. California, Florida, Maryland, Massachusetts, Montana, Oregon, Rhode Island, Texas, Washington, Utah, and Vermont, among others, have required local governments to adopt zoning and permitting reforms to bolster housing development, such as allowing for duplexes and other multi-unit housing on lots zoned for single-family use, allowing accessory dwelling units to be built, expediting permitting, decreasing or eliminating minimum lot sizes, increasing allowed building heights, reduced parking requirements, increasing density around transit sites, or automatically rezoning commercial areas to allow for mixed-use development. Arizona and Colorado also considered land use reform this year, which would have used several of the measures above. Those bills have not passed. Oklahoma has created a $215 million housing trust fund, mostly for zero-interest construction loans for affordable homes, while Massachusetts has dedicated over $4 billion to a slate of housing construction and preservation initiatives. California recently allowed faith institutions and nonprofit universities to use their land for affordable housing if they so choose, and without the need for rezoning, end quote. We should be working together to find ways to decrease current regulations to allow for more housing, to find ways together to reduce housing costs to deal with these crises. We need to be looking at what is going on around us in surrounding states to better handle the crisis at hand. We should not be looking for ways to increase regulations, nor should we be looking to increase the cost of housing that 70% of your constituents cannot reasonably afford. I've heard and read a lot of comments that have been made over the years, and I can just hear the comment from that statement to quote, just build a cheaper house. The problem is that we as builders have parameters that we have to stay within in order for a home to appraise and qualify for financing. I'm not going to delve further into that tonight, but I can always expound on further on that if needed. Due to these stated issues, among others, our associate industry oppose increasing regulatory actions and costs on new home construction. I've crossed out some of what has been said because it's been touched on, but impact fees have become a popular term over the past year or previous years even. The comment is that growth should pay for itself. Well, my question tonight is, when did a new home equate to growth? New homes do not equal new growth. New homes do not cause growth. New homes are a result, one result of growth. Taxing new homes is not taxing growth. The growth is already here. The growth needs these homes. An impact fee also can be a fee source of income that goes up and down. The numbers that have been discussed in different forms and tonight have been built off of number of permits pulled over previous years. According to the Federal Reserve economic data within Rutherford County from 2021 to 2022, there's been a 38% decrease in the number of permits pulled, which would and did decrease the funds received by 38% from the previous year. When discussing impact fees, there are three fees, as the mayor brought up. You've got impact fees, you've got development taxes, you've got adequate facility taxes. On our end, they're essentially, for our new home, the same thing. It's all a tax on new construction. Rutherford County previously had a development tax, started out $750, then doubled to $1,500 per home, as mentioned, and then swapped out for the adequate facilities tax at $1 per square foot. Mentioned that raised about $600, which was about 50%, which is currently in place. We have a current fee in place being charged on every new home. It has been commented numerous times that growth doesn't pay for itself and that the county is subsidizing the builders and developers. However, Rutherford County and the cities within spend money every year to encourage new businesses to come here and even directly subsidize these businesses in order to bring the growth. This is one of the direct causes for growth, and it is a direct cause for the need of new homes. On the other end of the spectrum, when developing an area for homes, every bit of that project is directly funded by the homes that will be built there. All of the roads, the stormwater system, wastewater pipes and systems, electrical lines, water lines, traffic signals, and road modifications outside of the subdivision, such as turn lanes, are all paid in full by the developer to the county specifications as well as the utilities requirements. There's no subsidy provided, and when the project is done, Rutherford County is left with a large increase in property and sales tax revenue. That will be reoccurring revenue for years to come. All of this to serve the need of growth, again, not creating growth, but serving the need that is added to by the desired and subsidized growth. How can we take the position that it is cost effective to directly subsidize and bring new businesses in, to be in a mindset that more jobs, new jobs bolster the economy, while at the same time take the product of that mindset and claim that new homes then affect the county's budget in a negative way. New homes are a result of growth, not the cause. People don't realize how much a single-family home build actually adds to the economy. Just in the direct cost of a new home that brings revenue directly to the county and the state through a transfer tax from the sale of land to the developer, taxes and fees for the development of the property, sales tax from the material used to develop the property, transfer tax again from the sale of the developed lot to a home builder, taxes and fees for the construction of a new home, sales tax from the material used to build a new home, and then transfer tax a third time from the sale of the home to a home buyer. And then you are left with the increased property taxes the county gets for years to come. I looked at a single 34-acre development of 179 homes. The homes appraised for around $400,000 each. Previously, that 34-acre field brought in $447 a year $447 a year in property tax revenue to Rutherford County every year from that field. It takes that and it makes it a $335,000, $840 revenue added to the county's budget every year. That's just from the property tax increase, a 75,000% increase. If growth is not paying for itself, we ultimately need to be discouraging new business and not blaming it on new homes. Now, we are, as an association and individually, part of this community, and we want to help to grow and make our community better. We've expressed to every party here that we're willing to work together. We've also expressed that the issue before us today is not a single item fix. And we will not support anything that's not inclusive of several items to solve the issue at hand. What's the solution? Some of our ideas include that we should petition the state to take the current in-place transfer tax that is paid out every time a piece of real estate is sold and greatly increase the percentage paid back to the counties. Currently, each county in the state only receives back a minimal percentage. This would not increase any burden on a taxpayer or home buyer and would greatly benefit counties across the state. We also believe that tax abatements for incoming companies and businesses should be greatly limited in both the county and the cities. We believe that we should reduce our regulation and work together to find ways to create more affordable housing within our community. We also believe that we should work together to reduce the cost for the county's buildings that are constructed. We believe that there's a lot of opportunity available for further value engineering, both the design and construction of these buildings. We also would recommend that we all work together to effect change and update TDEC's regulations to be able to utilize current technology in wastewater disposal, which would allow greater flexibility and more affordable projects for the county, as well as businesses, developments, and single-family homes. The Home Builders Association of Tennessee will pursue to garner support from our state association and other associations for legislation that conforms to the positions that we've stated this evening. In addition to this, HBACT believes that we all should make a reasonable efforts to work together to better our community and make homes more affordable. I did jot down a couple notes on some of the slides that were shown, and then I have to read them. I will just comment that one thing that I had noticed on the chart from the tax dollars versus the income from the adequate facilities tax versus the population on the chart that was shown was half and half. The first half was the $1,500 development tax. The second half was the raised fee. And so if the fee had been instituted for the entire year, that fee would have been greater. Also, I had looked into the birth rate, the growth rate, the year in question where we're bringing the 9,000 number, and 14% of that, about, if I remember my math right, was about 1,300 of that new people in our community are the number of births on top after removing from deaths. So those weren't people moving into our community, those were people that were born into our community. And actually, when I did the math, that ended up being around over 4,000 births that year. So we're not just talking about all these people moving into this area, we're also talking about people that are already here, as I stated, that cannot afford these homes with these increasing prices. I did not think to ask about a PowerPoint, but I did write some of these facts and information down that I've presented tonight, and they're available for whomever may want them, and that's what I have to say tonight.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Does anybody have on the panel delegation have any questions of Chris? Representative Terry.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I do have a question for you, and that was, and you said, homes are the result, but the people that are coming here, that is the growth. And so there's something I know that's been said out there, which I think is a concern for you guys, and it relates to not having all this on your backs or something along those lines. The question, and it said, I've seen where people say, well, put the burden on the home builder, but the reality is the people moving here, the growth that is coming here is the people that are here. And one of the questions has to do with like the loans, if you had to pay an impact fee or something up front versus at closing. When it's at closing, it would be the home buyer that would be paying it, whereas up front, it would be you floating a loan until the end, and that would be tax on you versus tax on the actual growth. Would that make a difference in your opinion?
So at the end of the day, the person who's buying, the individual that is buying the home is paying for the fee, regardless, whatever it is. NAHB's studies state that if the fee is realized at the time the developer starts a project, by the time the home buyer receives it, it is a 30% increase from what that fee originally was. If it's at the time that the builder starts building to the time that the home buyer buys it, it's about a 15% increase to that final number. And there is an aspect that, yes, we do have people moving here from out of state. I don't have data to support this, but we've got a lot of builders that have talked about it, and honestly, the biggest need for the affordable homes are for people that are in our community. I build custom homes. That's where people can see, you know, the people that are moving here typically are going to have money. They're moving here because it's cheaper than where they're at. They're not buying the starter homes. They're not buying the new homes. They're buying existing, they're building custom, or they're renovating a house once they move in. I'm in the middle of a project for a couple out of Hawaii that are doing a major remodel. They bought a house here and they're redoing every single aspect of it.
I do have a follow-up to that, and this goes to the $1,500 that was back in 2005, and the county had an opportunity back then, as the other counties, Wilson, Williamson, to change their charter and put some fees in there, and they did not do that at that time, but they put in a static fee. Over time, obviously, the cost of housing and materials have gone up, but that fee has been static. Had the county adopted the County Powers Relief Act, the $1 per square foot, in 2006, and had the county worked to have that indexed to inflation, had they adopted it and every 4 years increased the 10%, I think it'd be $1.50 they would be doing right now. Had they indexed that to inflation, it'd be between $2.25 and $2.50 right now. Is that something? I mean, again, that would have been indexed to inflation with the current cost today, and it's been. I know there is a potential bill out there that may add another $1.50 to that. Is that something that you would support? Because the numbers show that had it been indexed to inflation and had this county adopted it, it would have been that much.
So Murfreesboro had a charter out for their $1,500 development tax. Wilson County had their charter out, and Williamson County had a charter out when the County Powers Relief Act was passed. Everybody that had a charter out there was grandfathered in. So Wilson County and Williamson County are actually today kind of the exceptions to the rule. I know they're the two that keep getting brought up because they're neighboring, but they're also an exception to the rule. If Rutherford County had taken and adopted and upped their fee back in '06, and I know you're saying indexing for inflation, but my understanding is that was kind of the purpose, part of the purpose for that 10% increase every 4 years. Today, our association is not able to support an increase to the cost of housing.
So any increase at all, is it locally or statewide?
Today, we're not able to support one.
Statewide or local? I mean,
yes.
Your local?
Yes.
And the statewide is a no as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Senator Reeves.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. You know, I think I heard the county say tonight they don't want to hurt the building community. And I do tend to think that's how they feel about things. I mean, some of the comments that, are you concerned that some of the suggestions that were made tonight will hurt your business and hurt other builders in town if we move forward with some of this? Will it truly slow down growth in your business?
I do believe that a impact fee and increase in facilities tax can and would slow down growth. I would be greatly concerned about a combination of the both. It's hard for anybody to look at it and see where that threshold is to where it will change. But it's not about the growth. Our association is here. Our association, the state and the national's biggest part of the association is affordable homes. We're dealing with the fact that 70% of U.S., or not of U.S., of Tennessee households can't afford to buy a new home. Yeah. That's our concern, is the cost of housing. We can't build affordable homes.
One more quick thing and I'll be done.
Yes, sir.
This transfer tax that you alluded to, have we calculated, can you speak to that real super quick, how much money that might generate for the county?
It's 17 million
Annually?
that we send. It's over 17 million. Bring half back.
We would get
Half back.
I have those numbers with me, Senator Reeves. So the real estate transfer tax is 37 cents per hundred, 67-409. So this, we've gone through a number of discussions and negotiations, and Murray County has been deeply involved in that as well. We've been talking to the statewide Home Builders Association, statewide Realtors Association. This is one of the things that came out of those discussions. Rutherford County, so for the last 3 years, I've got 21, 22, 23, I've got these numbers from the Department of Revenue. Roughly the way this works, half the money goes into the state general fund, the other half goes into several buckets. So assuming you leave the buckets alone and you just focus on the part that's going to the state general fund, it was a total of $251 million in fiscal 21. It was a total of $359 in fiscal 22 and a total of $287 in fiscal 23. So we're probably talking 125 to 180 is what would come back. So it's proportional because it's based on those qualifying real estate, and there's some that qualify and some that don't, freehold state, and there's a whole body of law around it. But roughly for Rutherford County, we're on the low side around $7.5 million a year, high side 10.
We'd get back.
Yep.
Recurring.
Now that as it was discussed, to be fair, and I want to be real fair to the Realtors Association who was involved in that discussion, this has been a really important issue for them. And so what they said was, if we were to go down that road, for their support, they would need, and I don't speak for them, but I'm trying to characterize generally how the discussion went. They would need to see parameters on how the money was spent, which I think if the parameters are capital, education, I mean, you've been hearing just about education. Those numbers are education. So if it's just capital education, Rutherford County can use those funds, I think, easily. But the larger concern I think that the Realtors Association has is that the 37 cent per hundred doesn't increase. And so in order to, their board had asked, or had conditioned, that they want a constitutional amendment to go along with it. A constitutional amendment to enshrine the 37 cents per hundred. So this was in the discussions that we've had, a lot of different components. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Hey, can I ask Will a question?
Yes.
I knew there was legislation out there. I've read it about the setting aside half of the tax you're talking about, the real estate value added, the sales tax on residential real estate. I hadn't had time to look at revenue to see what it was. What did you say the total statewide revenue right now being raised by the state?
Well, so it fluctuates, right? So we've seen
Like last year.
in 23, 287 million was the total draw.
Okay, statewide.
Statewide. So half of that goes into the state general fund. The other half is already goes into buckets.
It goes where?
Into different buckets. There's different.
Okay, right now the counties, it's not been sent back to the county.
That's right. It's going into like wetlands funds.
So the 287 half goes to the state, the other half is spent on other mandated. All right, so we're talking about the state being able to without affecting all the other buckets, the half of the 287, we can, okay.
That's exactly right. So on a high,
You
so,
supplied the numbers I was gonna ask for tomorrow.
yeah, so in 21 to 23, we've seen a lot of volatility. On the low end, it was 250 million. On the high end, 360 million. But you can balance that out. I mean, it's 120 to 180 million.
Other question, you had mentioned also seeing there was legislation that I've saw recently that it was $1.50 with a, was that an increase or a total?
So
An increase over the existing in any county, or is that just the, it's kind of hard to read, and then it said another part of the line, it can increase to another $1.50. Was that a maximum of 3? I've got to ask more questions about it. I just saw it yesterday.
So to be clear, there are a variety of different proposals floating around. We started off working on the County Powers Relief Act, which I think is what you're talking about, adjustment of the $1 on the County Powers Relief Act. We talked about $4, $3, $2 to $6. $1.50 is the last one that I saw a couple versions of it. It has a 4-year review, so you'd have to keep implementing it every 4 years. You have to hit growth thresholds and so forth. But $1.50 was the new amount established, and I believe it had an escalator in it. I think at 10%. I think.
It mentioned 150 twice, and I was assuming said if the county commission increased it another $1.50, I was assuming they could do that over 4 years, or at the end of the 4 years. It was kind of hard to understand.
Well, there's different
the way it was
versions.
written.
There's different versions. I can tell you sort of the main caveats are, part of it is about when is it due, and so that was thrown out as a negotiation. Will that help? Does that help home builders? We kept trying to get to the point where it would be acceptable. And the thought was there that it takes the burden completely off the home builder, and it's on to the people that are buying the home. So if they're moving here from other states or whatever. But so there are different components to it. The $1.50, I think, is sort of the central component. The other central component is changing the date of when it's due to 30 days after the title transfer. So it becomes part of the closing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Will. All right, the last part of our agenda as we start to wrap things up is just some comments about the previous state investment in Rutherford County, as well as some outlook on the budget. And I understand Representative Baum is going to take the first shot at that. Charlie, thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and we'd like to thank everybody for being here. My colleagues have asked me to share a few specific financial statistics with you. We are aware that the biggest item in a county's budget is education, and of course that becomes even larger when you consider building new schools. The state's aware of that, and so the state has tried to increase funding, state funding for K through 12 education the last several years. The first statistic my colleagues have asked me to provide is what the sizes of these increases are. 3 fiscal years ago, the state provided an increase in funding for K through 12 education of about $350 million additional dollars. 2 fiscal years ago, an increase in funding of about $650 million additional dollars, and then this last year with the new TISA funding formula, $1 billion new dollars for education from the state. Now those statistics are statewide. For Rutherford County specifically, TISA provided recurring $57 million additional dollars for education for the Rutherford County school system, and $9 million additional recurring dollars for the Murfreesboro city school system. We also allocated about $30 to $35 million in a separate pot in growth funds, and I think you heard a little earlier tonight that Rutherford County got a fairly healthy share of those funds. I think we originally thought the funds would go to build new buildings. I think they went to fund growth in the form of new students that had been added to the school system. As part of the forecast, unfortunately, at this point in our current fiscal year, our revenues at the state level are not at the level we had projected. We're in the 4th month of the fiscal year. Through November of this year, we're in the 4th month of our fiscal year. And we have made 2 different sets of projections. One's through the Department of Finance and Administration. Our state revenues are about $200 million behind where we projected according to F&A. Fiscal Review Committee also provides a projection, and our state revenues currently through the fourth month are about 157 million behind where we had projected them. And so even though 4 months is not the full 12-month fiscal year, it looks like we're not going to have as much flexibility financially this coming year to help in the ways that we have the last 3 years. You may wonder, how has this happened? These shortfalls are really just shortfalls of about 5%. Here's how we got there. We projected revenue growths of about 3% this year, and our revenues are actually have shrunk about 2%, and that accounts for the 5% spread. That explains why our revenues are coming in at a slower rate than our projections. The intuition for that economy-wide probably has a lot to do with higher interest rates, and those higher interest rates have begun to slow economic growth. We'll see a slower rate of economic growth this fourth quarter of this year, than we otherwise would have seen. And so those higher interest rates are having an effect. They're having an effect pulling down the rate of price inflation. They're also dampening the rate of economic growth. And so we're going to have a little bit less flexibility to help local governments in the upcoming fiscal year, it looks like. But that makes this conversation that we've had tonight even more important, because it suggests the county could be even under a little bit greater financial pressure.
Could I ask both Charlie and Dr. Sullivan a question?
You may. Go ahead, sir.
Dr. Sullivan, you had mentioned earlier, which I did not know, and I don't know, I think, Charlie, you may have mentioned this. Of course, TISA gave high-growth counties more for classrooms overall budget, but there was also a part in there for construction, and you said that wasn't funded the first
Yes.
year?
Correct.
Hopefully it will be. Is it planned to be next year, or maybe Charlie can find that out, or I don't know. Could be, since it's a new program, it wasn't had enough time to build up revenue. I don't know, but we need to find that out.
Tim, it was funded. It was a pot of about $35 million. And the way the money was supposed to be allocated was it was first going to be used to fund student growth during the school year, and then whatever was left was going to be used for capital projects, which would mean new schools. Okay. And school districts across the state grew so much that all of the money in this pot went to fund the increases during the school year in the form of new students, and there didn't end up being any money left to fund capital projects, but the amount that was allocated is exactly what was dispersed. It was about $35 million. It just got taken up by in the form of allocations for additional students, and the money was all used for that rather than for new school buildings. But it was not an issue of the money not being allocated. We allocated exactly what we said we would allocate, and we distributed every dollar of it. It just went for new student growth rather than new buildings.
Charlie, it may be too early to know yet because he's verbally telling us, but we haven't actually seen the governor's budget yet. But he's talking about proposing spending more, increasing TISA, especially for fast-growing counties. Hopefully, Charlie, have you heard any negotiations yet where that would increase its fund?
Well, we've got a mechanism to do it, and it's this pot of money that I've referred to as dollars for growing school districts. What we would want to do in this upcoming budget year is just allocate a larger sum of money for that pot. This last year was about $35 million. This coming fiscal year, it needs to be a larger amount of money, but we have the mechanism in place. We just need to put more money behind it.
All right, thank you.
And to hit on that, you're exactly right. $35 million, I believe, was the number the Tennessee Department of Education probably would have given to the General Assembly to use. But to answer, was there any available for infrastructure? There absolutely was not.
Got used up in the classroom, basically.
And we actually got a lesser
Administration.
portion than we would have previously under BEP because of a proration that was done. Senator White, to hit on yours, we received $342 million roughly that was the state and local split. The state split of that 75% with our fiscal capacity is $257 million, 13,000. Local would have picked up 85,000, or 85 million, sorry, 257 million from the state. Local was 85 million. A couple things I think that needs to be brought up with that. We have to, the General Assembly passed with TCA 49.3.112. We have an accountability that we have to turn into the State Department. TISA accountability report template that shows how we are using our 70% of our funds to meet third grade retention and also accountability. There's also a 54-page TISA guide, and the word building and construction is not mentioned one time. And so we're having to use our TISA funding, rightfully so, for our students right there. So just wanted to a great point.
So on average, what is the state sending down per student?
I'd have to do some quick math portion on that. So 3.
Because I know the weights, and I know each child normally has at least 1 to 2 weights
Yes.
following them with the new formula.
Sometimes you feel like also statistics just speak to you, and it's ironic. There's a USA Today article out right now that talks about us being one of the biggest and most affordable growing places yet again. So 4:12 p.m. it was released today.
So for the base, just taking out the weights, the
Right.
base, it's a little over $5,000 is what is the state portion coming down on a per student basis. And of course, that fluctuates within $25 or $50 a kid, but a little over $5,000.
Okay. And what are you spending per child that the Rutherford County is putting in?
Right over 10,000. So
We're $10,000, a little over $10,000 in a per pupil expenditure. And so the state's putting in anywhere between 5 and 6, depending on how we settle up. Because as you know, we settle up at the end of the year in June. The state sends an estimated portion of TISA, used to be BEP, on June 15th, and they settle up with us. In the last 2 years, they haven't settled up with us until August. And so that's why I can't tell you exactly for this year since it's TISA's first year.
Right.
So it should be somewhere in the neighborhood.
10,019 roughly.
So it should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 to 4 on a rough estimate.
And to put that into perspective, if the rest of the state did not get TISA funding and only Rutherford County did, we would still rank number 98 out of the 142 districts per pupil. And so but we of course know the other districts got funding, so they'll go up too. So we're still doing a lot less.
Okay. Thank you.
The other question that came up, I want to point out one thing. The numbers you saw on the chart tonight for adequate facilities tax, the reason we used a little bit older numbers was so we could get a comparability. However, as of June 23rd, when our audit comes out in about 2 to 3 weeks, we received about $5.9 million. So almost $500,000 more in that adequate facilities tax, and that would have given us almost a full year on that. And so just that would have been our current numbers, but we were trying to be equal comparability wise.
To be fair, that would be 5.9 million with almost 51,000 students, so we have a
Right.
higher student roll cost, so we did an apples to apples comparison.
Good deal. Okay, guys, we've had a great program tonight, great discussion. So I guess kind of where do we go from here? And I'm going to offer to use the chamber resources to work with the mayor, maybe work with the members of the delegation and others to find out, maybe a smaller working group the next several weeks to kind of identify some opportunities and some additional common ground that we can do to make everybody as happy as possible. So thank you for coming tonight. We very much appreciate all of your support, all of our elected officials, what you guys do. It's a tough job, and we appreciate all your support over the years. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody, and we'll be back in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.